My name is Fong Hao. I woke up in front of a dark cave, holding a stone axe. A cruel man with a whip was ordering me and 4 other farmers to go inside and find a treasure chest. He whipped me across the back, and the pain was terrible. A voice in my head explained the rules of this world, something called the Game of Lords. You recruit people, gather resources, build up your territory, and try to survive. The man with the whip was our lord, and we were just his disposable workers. He sent us into the cave to test if it was safe. Deep inside, we found a huge tiger covered in wounds. It was bleeding badly, but it was still dangerous. When we tried to sneak past it to grab the chest, it attacked. I yelled at the others to fight. We killed it, but 4 of my companions died. I walked out alone and waved to the Lord. He got excited and ran inside without thinking. While he was distracted by the open chest, I swung my axe into his neck from behind. He never expected a farmer to turn on him. I hit him again, and he died. I took his book, the Lord's book. The moment I touched it, the system noticed something wrong and corrected my status. It gave me a huge bonus. But because I killed my own Lord, I got marked with a high sin value and was placed into the evil faction, the undead. That scared me at first. It meant I might be everyone's enemy. But I didn't regret it. Being free was better than being someone's slave. I opened the book and checked what I had. My resources were at 0. I could craft basic things like rope and stone tools. My only building option was a graveyard, because of my undead status. There was also a chat channel where other players were talking. Most of them were trapped in their villages, surrounded by dangerous animals. The Lord I killed had actually been one of the braver ones. Too bad for him. His bravery led him straight to me. I went back to the tiger's body and hid the chest's contents underneath it. Then I butchered the tiger and got meat, hides, and bones. With the Lord's book in my hands, I was no longer a farmer. I was a lord now, even if the world already considered me a villain. I didn't even have to butcher the tiger myself. A beam of light did everything. The meat, hide, and bones were sorted out automatically. After the body vanished, the items I'd hidden underneath were revealed, a warehouse blueprint, and some hemp rope. I grabbed the fallen farmer's tools, tied up my supplies, and left the cave. I needed to reach my territory fast. Every lord had one, protected by a barrier for 7 days. When I arrived, I found a small thatched hut with my name on it and a half-underground structure called a crypt. Other players could recruit farmers, but I could only summon skeletons. That's what being undead meant. I started recruiting right away. The system said I could get 5 skeletons. But then my 100-fold bonus kicked in. I got 505. They crawled out of the ground one after another, bony white figures filling my entire territory. Some didn't even fit inside the barrier. I was shocked at first, but then relieved. Skeletons don't need food. If I'd multiplied farmers instead, I'd never be able to feed them all, and they might have turned against me. I told the skeletons to gather resources and handed out the few tools I had. They shuffled off in a huge crowd. 500 workers against other players' 5 farmers. The advantage was obvious. While they worked, I checked the crafting recipes. I needed straw to make rope, and rope plus wood and stone to make tools. When the first batch of skeletons came back with materials, I crafted a rope. The 100-fold boost activated again. 1 rope became 101. I tested it on tools. Same result. Every stone axe and pickaxe I crafted multiplied. I made over 200 axes and 300 pickaxes, piling them up like a small mountain. I called the skeletons back to grab tools. Most of them came, but about 20 were missing. I figured they were lost or out of earshot. Then a group of them returned carrying a dead mountain goat. They were banged up, one missing an arm, another with broken ribs, but they'd gone hunting on their own. I told them good job. The skeleton just dropped the goat and walked away without any reaction. No emotions, no complaints. I called after it to take a tool, and it stiffly turned back, grabbed one, and left. In the chat, other players were complaining about their farmers getting tired and needing rest. My skeletons had no stamina bar at all. They just kept working without stopping. Gather, deliver, repeat. They were the perfect workers. I butchered the goat and got more meat, hide, and bones. Things were coming together. I had hundreds of tireless workers, a growing pile of resources, and a territory that no one could touch for 7 days. Not a bad start for a so-called villain. My skeletons never stopped working. Before long, piles of wood, stone, and straw formed small hills around my hut. There was barely room to stand. I needed a warehouse. I checked the blueprint and had enough materials. Building it cost me some rope, but I just crafted one and the 100-fold boost gave me 101. The warehouse appeared instantly, a simple wooden building with a thatched roof. The skeletons started putting resources inside it instead of dumping them on the ground. With my army of 500 tireless workers, resources piled up fast. I decided to upgrade my main building. I clicked upgrade, and the small hut grew bigger and sturdier, turning into a level 2 lord's house. Then a world announcement rang out for everyone to hear. I was the first lord to upgrade my main city. The other players went crazy in the chat. They couldn't understand how I'd gathered so much so fast. Some called me a cheater. They were still cooking vegetable soup for their tired farmers while I was already building. The rewards were great. I got a passive skill that made my skeletons stronger and faster. I also received blueprints for a crossbow and a special building called the Spring of Renewal. The crossbow needed iron I didn't have yet, and the spring required rare materials I'd never even seen. But at least they were unlocked for later. Next, I upgraded my crypt. It expanded into a bigger catacomb, and my recruitment limit went up by 5. I recruited again, and the 100-fold boost gave me another 505 skeletons. I now had over 1,000. I crafted more tools for all of them and sent them out. But then I heard wolves howling. A pack of prairie wolves was attacking my skeletons outside the barrier, ripping them apart. A few skeletons tried to fight back, but got overwhelmed. I was furious. I shouted for all nearby skeletons to attack. Over 100 of them turned and charged at the wolves without any fear. That's the thing about the undead, they don't feel afraid. More skeletons kept joining the fight, and soon the wolves were surrounded. 6 wolves died, and the rest ran away. I had the dead wolves butchered and got a lot of meat, hides, and bones. But I wasn't happy. Those wolves had damaged my workers and could come back. While my territory's protection barrier was still active, I had to deal with them for good. I grabbed my weapon and called out to every skeleton. Over 900 of them gathered around me, and together we marched in the direction the wolves had fled. We marched through a forest and found the wolves' home, an open grassland with animal bones scattered everywhere. More than 20 wolves were resting in the sun, and behind them was a dark cave. I ordered my skeletons to attack. They charged out of the bushes in a massive wave, forming a circle around the wolves. The fight was one-sided. Nearly 1,000 skeletons against 20-something wolves. It was over fast. Then the Wolf King appeared from the cave. It was bigger and stronger, a Tier 2 beast with glowing green eyes. It let out a powerful howl, but the moment it saw my skeleton army, it went silent. The skeletons rushed into the cave after it. A few minutes later, they came out carrying its body and a treasure chest. They dropped the chest at my feet. I opened it and found 2 blueprints, one for a barracks and one for a wooden shield. The barracks was exactly what I needed. We hauled everything back to my territory. I butchered all the wolves, 24 regular ones, and the Wolf King. The meat alone was over 10,000 units. Way more than I could ever eat. I built the barracks right away. For my faction, it was called a bone burial ground. Recruiting a skeleton soldier cost 300 bones, and thanks to the 100-fold boost, I got 101 soldiers from a single recruitment. The soldiers were a step above my workers. They had basic combat skills and a shield bash ability. I crafted 101 wooden shields using the new blueprint, handed them out along with stone axes, and sent the soldiers to patrol around my territory and protect the workers. By evening, everything was running smoothly. My stomach reminded me I was still human. I lit a fire in my cabin and roasted some meat on sticks. While eating, I opened the chat channel. People were desperate. Many were starving, begging for food. Some couldn't even leave their villages. One person offered 5 million to go back home. Then I had an idea. I had way too much meat. I could trade it. I posted an offer, 1,000 units of meat in exchange for wood, stone, or iron ore. The chat exploded. People recognized my name from the world announcement. Some call me a legend. Some call me greedy. One guy offered to pull out his gold tooth as payment. Another tried trading a gold chain for 2 pieces of meat. It was chaos, but I didn't care. I had what everyone needed, and that made me powerful. My meat sold out in less than 2 minutes. 1,000 units, gone just like that. My private messages flooded with people begging for food. Some offered personal photos, some offered to be my girlfriend. I ignored the desperate ones. I listed another 500 units. Same price, wood, stone, or iron. Sold out again instantly. After 2 rounds of trading, I had 60,000 units of wood, almost 12,000 stone, and 20 iron. The materials filled my warehouse and spilled across every open space in my territory. Then someone sent me a private message offering an equipment blueprint, simple leather armor. He said he couldn't use it because he had no materials left and needed food badly. I gave him 50 units of meat for it. That was generous considering how scarce food was. I recorded the blueprint in my book and crafted the armor right away. The 100-fold boost kicked in and gave me 101 sets. I put one on myself and handed the rest to my skeleton soldiers. They actually looked like proper fighters now. By then it was late. I spread some straw inside my cabin and slept. I woke up sore all over, but the skeletons were still working like they'd never stopped. I roasted meat for breakfast and listed another 2,000 units for trade. People were already waiting. The meat disappeared even faster than yesterday. My name was becoming famous, the guy with endless food while everyone else starved. With all the materials I'd gathered from trading, I upgraded my warehouse to level 2. It could now hold 30,000 units and kept food from spoiling. I wanted to upgrade more, but the system told me I needed to level up my main cabin first. Then I got a private message from someone named Dong Jiayue. She had a special or called Shadowstone and wanted to trade it for meat. My eyes lit up. Shadowstone was exactly what I needed to upgrade my undead buildings. I'd been looking for it everywhere. I told her I was interested right away. I pretended the Shadowstone wasn't useful to me, but Dong Jiayue was desperate for food. I offered her 30 units of meat per stone, and she was grateful. She told me she'd found it in an underground tomb near her territory. I made a mental note. Shadowstones came from graveyards. With resources still pouring in from my tireless skeletons, I upgraded my lord's cabin to level 3 and my warehouse to level 3 too. The warehouse could now hold 50,000 units, but even that wasn't enough. Materials were piled up everywhere outside. I decided it was time to explore. I strapped on my leather armor, grabbed a stone axe, and led my skeleton soldiers out. We followed a stream, and I marked its location on a board. Then I noticed something. Tracks in the soft mud. We followed the tracks and ran into a group of kobolds. Ugly dog-headed creatures, about a meter tall, pulling carts loaded with animal carcasses. There were around 20 of them, armed with slings. They attacked us, and the stones hit hard enough to stagger my front line. But with hundreds of skeletons charging at them, the kobolds didn't stand a chance. After the fight, I found something important on the bodies, crawling spines. These were the real recruitment material for the undead faction, like soul crystals were for humans. I also picked up iron daggers, which were better weapons than my stone axes. I armed 20 of my best soldiers with them. I tracked the kobolds' trail back to their camp, a walled village deep in the forest with a watchtower. There were 500 or 600 kobolds inside, including warriors and champions with iron weapons. Some of their hunting parties were carrying human bodies alongside animal ones. I pulled back quietly. The camp had to go, but I wasn't ready yet. Back at my territory, I used the 8 crawling spines to recruit soldiers. The 100-fold boost gave me 808 skeleton soldiers. I crafted shields and axes for all of them. I grilled some meat for lunch, slicing it with my new iron dagger. Much better than hacking at it with a stone axe. I just wished I had some seasoning. In the chat, people were calling my name, waiting for me to list food. Some were starving. Others had built barracks, but couldn't recruit soldiers without soul crystals. Everyone needed food. The bigger their population grew, the more they needed. I listed 2,000 units of meat. The chat went silent for 2 seconds, then exploded with excitement. People were relieved I was still around and still selling. By now, I was the most famous lord in this world, the one with endless food while everyone else struggled to survive. The 2,000 units of meat sold out instantly. I got mountains of materials in return. Dong Jiayue messaged me again with 2 more shadow stones. I bought them for 60 units of meat. Now I had 3 stones total, enough to upgrade my underground crypt. After the upgrade, my recruitment limit went up to 20. I recruited 10 more skeletons, and the 100-fold boost gave me 1,010. I crafted tools, armor, and shields for everyone. By now I had about 2,000 worker skeletons and 900 soldiers. Only 20 soldiers had iron daggers. The rest still carried stone axes. It wasn't perfect, but it was a real army. I climbed on a rock and tried to give a brave speech about destroying the kobold camp. The skeletons just stared at me with empty eye sockets. Not a single reaction. I jumped down feeling foolish. It was only day 2, and I was already talking to myself. Surrounded by nothing but bones all day, I felt like I was going crazy. We marched toward the kobold camp. I kept my army crouched low, trying to get close before they spotted us. We had no ranged fighters, so closing the distance fast was important. But the rustling bushes gave us away. Some kobold lumberjacks noticed us. I gave the order to charge. The skeletons burst from the bushes and rushed the camp. A horn blew inside, and the kobolds slammed their gate shut, leaving their own workers outside to die under my skeleton's axes. The kobold throwers climbed their walls and started slinging stones down at us. The rocks hit hard. Shields and armor could block them, but my unarmored worker skeletons cracked and broke apart. I cursed myself for having no ranged troops. But numbers won out. My skeletons reached the wall and started climbing on top of each other, stacking their bodies like building blocks to reach the top. It looked exactly like that zombie scene from World War Z. Creepy, but effective. The kobolds couldn't match my numbers. My skeletons broke through the gate and flooded into the camp like a wave. The kobolds fought alone without teamwork, and the undead don't feel fear, so it was over quickly. I walked in after the fighting stopped and ordered cleanup. Everything was smashed up so badly, I couldn't even tell which kobold had been the chief. I entered the largest building, probably the leader's hall. Inside was furniture, a bearskin rug, and behind a door, a real bed with fur blankets. I was thrilled. No more sleeping on straw. There was also a black iron chest, fancier than the wooden ones I'd found before. I opened it and got 3 blueprints, a market, a cart, and an iron axe, plus 20 battle coins. Very generous. The kobold warehouse was packed with supplies too. I had my skeletons haul everything out. When I counted it all up, the loot was incredible. Over 100 crawling spines, thousands of units of wood, stone, and meat, 47 iron, plus iron daggers, battle axes, single-edged knives, flatbed carts, furniture, and even a big iron pot. Raiding was definitely the fastest way to grow. I lost about a third of my troops, but that didn't worry me. Worker skeletons were free to recruit, and with 122 crawling spines, I could multiply them 100-fold and get over 12,000 soldiers whenever I wanted. 12 carts weren't enough to carry everything, so I crafted more. The 100-fold boost gave me 101 carts. We loaded up all the supplies and headed home along the main road since the carts couldn't fit through the forest. I rode on top of the cargo with a fur pillow behind my head, reading the chat channel to pass the time. People were complaining about their weak stone tools. One guy found skeleton bones in his fishing net and got so scared he sold the fish to someone else without telling them. The buyer found out and got furious. I couldn't help but laugh. I decided to keep the kobold camp as a second base. The buildings were already there, and I could station some worker skeletons to gather resources from that area. My territory's surroundings would run dry eventually, so having a second location made sense. Back at my territory, the supplies sorted themselves automatically. I had the skeletons carry my new bed into the cabin and sent the fur blankets to the river for washing. Finally, no more sleeping on straw. I threw the old thatch into the warehouse with a disgusted look. I crafted iron axes using the new blueprint. The 100-fold boost gave me 808. I handed them out to my workers and soldiers, replacing the old stone axes. Then I reorganized everyone. 900 skeletons went a-quarrying since undead buildings need more stone. 500 got iron axes for logging. 200 soldiers were reassigned to push carts and transport materials instead of patrolling. Everything ran smoother after that. I hung the wash fur bedding on a pole to dry and checked the market blueprint I'd gotten from the kobold camp. It cost basic materials, so I built it right away. The moment it was finished, the system asked if I wanted to accept an undead merchant caravan called the King of Bones. Apparently, my faction influence of 200, earned from being the first to upgrade my main city, was enough to qualify. I accepted. A countdown appeared above a glowing grave inside the market fence. The caravan would arrive in 12 hours, crawling out of the ground like my skeletons. I was used to that by now. For dinner, I grilled meat again. I had a metal pot from the kobold camp, but refused to use it. Those creatures ate humans, so that pot was staying in storage. While eating, I read the chat. People were complaining about stone axes breaking after a few uses. Then someone posted an iron axe for sale, 50 units of meat, or 8 iron per axe. Everyone called him a scammer. The price was steep, but his argument made sense. Faster tools meant better survival. People went quiet after that. I noticed his name, Yahello. I also had the iron axe blueprint, so his prices didn't affect me. But then he sent me a private message asking if I was online. Yahello messaged me privately, trying to sell me iron axes at 50 meat each. I already had the blueprint, so I didn't need his overpriced tools. Worse, he posted in the chat that I'd agreed to buy from him, using my name to trick others into paying his high prices. I set the record straight publicly. Then I listed 100 iron axes at half his price, for iron each. His customers demanded refunds, and he was furious. He threatened me, but I wasn't worried. In this world, threats mean nothing without the strength to back them up. People started messaging me to trade blueprints for axes. I picked up useful ones: wooden barrels, benches, drying racks, and a single bed. Dong Jiayue traded more shadow stones for 10 axes. I stocked 2,000 units of meat for everyone and went to bed. My third morning was wonderful. Sleeping in a real bed made all the difference. I built drying racks to preserve meat and assigned a skeleton to handle it. Then the merchant caravan arrived. A skeleton named Ruer climbed out of a grave in my market, dressed in fancy robes with a gemstone ring. He could actually talk, the first skeleton I'd met that could. He was polite, like a noble. His shelves had 6 items. I bought everything: an iron sword blueprint, leather helmet blueprint, metal parts blueprint, an organ jar, a skill called Divine Presence, and a blank map. The map would record terrain automatically. The Divine Presence skill let me possess my skeletons and control them directly. The organ jar was for harvesting organs from powerful creatures. After Ruer left, I recruited using my 122 crawling spines. The 100-fold boost gave me over 12,000 skeleton soldiers. I crafted iron swords, shields, armor, and helmets for all of them. Dong Jiayue messaged me again. She'd found an ancient tomb near her territory, but ran into undead creatures on the 3rd level. 2 of her militia died. She wanted to borrow iron axes as weapons. Instead, I gave her 4 real single-edged knives and 4 shields. She was shocked. She hadn't expected actual weapons. I needed her alive to keep supplying me shadow stones. But honestly, I also just didn't want her to get hurt. Then I tested my new Divine Presence skill. I possessed a skeleton soldier, and my real body went limp. Through the skeleton's eyes, I ordered 2 others to carry my body to bed. They bashed the door open with their heads and threw me onto the mattress like a sack. I kicked them in anger, but they just stood there blankly. I took 2,000 skeleton soldiers exploring. Since I was inside a skeleton, there was no real danger to me. We caught wild boars and goats along the way. Then a massive red bear, a level 3 beast, burst out of the forest and smashed me with its paw. I flew into a tree, lost half my shield, and cracked 2 ribs. But in a skeleton body, I felt no pain and could still move fine. Meanwhile, without my knowing, the kobold chieftain had returned to find his camp destroyed and everything stolen. He followed the cart tracks to my territory and saw thousands of skeletons. Too many to fight alone. So he sent word to another tribe called the Fireblade, inviting them to raid me together. My skeleton soldiers swarmed the giant bear with their new iron swords and shields. It was incredibly strong. Every swipe sent soldiers flying with broken bones. But we had the numbers. I found my moment and drove my sword into its weak spot, finishing it off. We loaded the bear onto a cart and searched for its den. Inside the cave, I found the skeleton of a dead adventurer with a tattered backpack. A map fell out, the Dragon Burial Cave. I told my soldiers to bury the adventurer's remains. They tried to lift the body, but it crumbled into pieces. They gathered the bones and buried them outside. The cave also had a treasure chest. Inside I found a stone hoe blueprint, a bathtub blueprint, and a natural gem, a rare resource needed for advanced troops and special buildings. Good stuff, even if the name didn't really fit my undead faction. We headed back to the territory loaded with loot. I ended the Divine Presence and returned to my real body. First thing I noticed was a big bump on my head from when the skeletons had bashed the door carrying me. I needed to remember to lie down properly before possessing a skeleton next time. I slaughtered everything we'd hunted. 5 iron wild boars, 3 one-horned sheep, and the giant bear. That gave me nearly 5,000 units of meat, plus hides and bones. The hunting trip was far more productive with me leading compared to letting the skeletons hunt alone. The Dragon Burial Cave map merged with my territory map automatically. It appeared in the northern mountains, but it was far away, too far to reach right now through unexplored fog. By evening, I stocked food for the other lords. People were getting anxious when I was late posting. Thousands of units sold out instantly as always. Demand kept growing as more people built barracks and recruited soldiers who all needed feeding. Someone I traded with before messaged me with an iron pot blueprint. I offered 3 iron axes for it. I traded 3 iron axes for the iron pot blueprint and crafted 101 pots. I kept 3 for myself, gave 1 back to the trader, and listed the rest for sale at 5 iron each. I also made 100 bath buckets and finally took a proper hot bath. It felt amazing. That evening I simmered meat soup for dinner and checked the chat. Someone who bought one of my pots discovered that cooking just vegetables in it produced rich, meaty broth with oil bubbles. The chat went wild. I figured it was probably the goblin camp pot I'd mixed in. Years of cooking meat had soaked into the iron. Either way, my pot sold out fast. Some people bought extras hoping to get a magic soup pot too. The next morning, day 4, I did some exercises. My muscles were getting weaker since crossing over, which worried me. After breakfast, I possessed a skeleton soldier and took 2,000 troops exploring westward. We ran into 3 lost wood element spirits, level 3 creatures made of vines and green energy. They grew vines from the ground to trap my skeletons, and their arms turned into whips. They fought well, but 2,000 skeletons overwhelmed them quickly. They burst into green light when they died. They dropped natural gems and earth traces. My skeletons found a black iron treasure chest nearby. Inside was a green quality spirit field blueprint, a green mine necklace, 5 more natural gems, a forest trace, and 15 war coins. The necklace boosted mental recovery. Perfect for me, since using divine presence drained my mind over time. The spirit field blueprint let me grow crops in the right location, speeding up their growth. Both were exactly what I needed at this stage. We kept exploring after the wood spirit fight. I replaced my soldiers' broken shields with ones from the fallen and pushed forward, mapping more terrain. What I didn't know was that trouble was brewing behind me. The kobold chieftain whose camp I'd raided had called for help from the Fireblade tribe. Real orc warriors, 2 meters tall and built for fighting. Their young commander Kudo brought his warriors to the old kobold camp, expecting easy loot. But when his scouts found my territory's protection shield, Kudo was furious. He couldn't break through it and nearly killed the kobold chieftain for wasting his time. Then a human stepped in, a lord named Zhuang Hong. His territory had been found by the Fireblade tribe early on, and instead of fighting, he surrendered and became their servant, gathering resources for them. He told Kudo that the shield probably belonged to another lord like him, and if they could lure that lord outside and kill him, the shield would fall. Kudo liked the idea and promised Zhuang Hong more power if he succeeded. Meanwhile, I spent the rest of the day exploring and hunting. My team brought back plenty of animals, and after returning, I slaughtered everything for over 7,000 units of meat. I built the spirit field using the green blueprint. It took a lot of materials, including rare natural gems and earth traces. The field was about 10 meters square with soft soil and a wooden fence, but I had no seeds yet, so planting would have to wait. That evening I made soup and checked the chat. Someone had been bitten by a wolf and was panicking about rabies. Others joked at first, then gave him advice about cleaning the wound. He messaged me privately, desperate to trade for an iron pot, just to boil clean water. A lord who'd been bitten by a wolf messaged me desperately needing an iron pot to boil water. He offered a bone arrow blueprint in exchange. The arrows were weak, fragile bone things that break on impact. But I didn't care. I gave him the pot without fuss. The bone arrow blueprint reminded me I also had a crossbow blueprint from earlier. Combined with the metal parts one could now craft, I had everything needed to make crossbows. They'd be perfect for my worker skeletons since crossbows don't need combat skill to use. But there was no rush. I'd deal with that later. I listed 5,000 units of meat and asked in the chat if anyone had crop seeds. The channel erupted. People joked about farming and fertilizer while I was still waiting for real offers. Someone messaged me with 20 potatoes. I traded 8 units of meat for them. Then I crafted stone hoes, 101, naturally. I only had one field, so most were useless. I assigned a skeleton to farming duty. It walked to the spirit field and planted the potatoes like a professional, cutting them into pieces, burying them properly, everything smooth. A countdown appeared, 7 days to harvest. Not bad. More people offered garlic and chili seeds. I bought them all and had the skeleton plant those too. Soon I'd have actual seasoning for my meals. After dinner, I exercised. While doing push-ups, 2 skeletons walked up and dropped a dead wild boar right next to me, covering my face in dust. I yelled at them, but they just walked away without caring. Then I noticed something. Tied to the boar's tail was a piece of hide with a handwritten note in Chinese. "Brother, I am a nearby lord. Come chat with me. Let's help each other. I am waiting for you in front of the eastern woods." It was already dark, a strange time to ask for a meeting. The fact that he was close enough to send a boar meant he had a base nearby. And the eastern woods were right where the old kobold camp was. That made me suspicious. Something didn't feel right. I examined the wild boar they'd sent. The wounds were too deep for a human lord. I found a thick red hair in the tusks, not human. Something was off about this invitation. I wasn't stupid enough to walk into an obvious trap, but I wasn't going to ignore it either. I stuffed a skeleton soldier with straw to look like a person, dressed it in my clothes, and sent it out with 2 guards to meet whoever was waiting. In the eastern woods, a man named Zhuang Hong was holding a torch. He greeted me warmly, but I could tell, no sane person stands alone in the dark forest at night. I called him out directly, told him to bring out his hidden people. Before he could answer, a metal blade shot from the bushes and pierced through my skeleton body. Then over 2,000 orc warriors rushed out. Their commander, Kudo, thought he'd won. But when the protection shield over my territory didn't disappear, they realized they'd been tricked. They examined the body and found it was just a skeleton stuffed with straw. I'd been watching through the eyes of another skeleton hiding in the distance. I followed their torches back to the old kobold camp and confirmed that's where they were staying. Orcs, kobolds, and the traitor Zhuang Hong, who'd surrendered to them and helped plan the ambush against me. Back in my body, I got to work. I crafted over 2,000 crossbows and 10,000 bone arrows. I armed my worker skeletons with crossbows and checked every soldier's equipment. Then I possessed a skeleton and led my entire army toward the kobold camp in the middle of the night. We surrounded the camp and unleashed a storm of arrows. The bow and arrows rained down for over 10 minutes. Most of the orcs died under that barrage. When it stopped, Kudo rallied his surviving warriors, about 1,000, and charged out screaming. My skeleton soldiers were waiting on both sides. 2,000 against 1,000. The skeletons swarmed them completely. Half an hour later, every orc was dead, including Kudo. I walked into the camp and found Zhuang Hong hiding in a corner, shaking. He begged me to spare him, said we were from the same homeland, offered me his territory. I asked if those were his last words. He cried and said he just wanted to survive. I understood his situation, but he chose to help the orcs kill other humans. If his plan had worked, I'd be dead. I swung my sword and cut his throat. I took his lord's book and his clothes, including a nice pair of sneakers. I wasn't proud of stripping a dead man, but I needed clothes and couldn't afford to be sentimental. I had his body buried. Then I ordered the skeletons to collect all the orc equipment. By then it was around 3 or 4 in the morning. My head was splitting from using divine presence all night. I ended the possession, drank some water, and collapsed into sleep. I slept until noon. When I woke up, my territory was quiet. All the skeletons were still at the kobold camp. My private messages were full of people worrying about me since I hadn't listed food yet. Some genuinely concerned, others hoping to claim my territory if I was dead. In the chat, Zhang Bin, the fisherman guy, was talking about finding more skeleton bones in his net, this time with leather armor and helmets attached. That confirmed his territory was downstream from the kobold camp. My battle debris kept floating his way. After eating, I possessed a skeleton and went back to the camp to check the loot. The haul was massive. Over 1,700 crawling spines, 120 iron, orc weapons and armor by the thousands, 12 carts, fruit, salt, and a map to something called the Manhwa market, a peaceful orc trading post where fighting was forbidden. That could be useful for spending war coins before my own merchant restocked. The best find was Kudo's personal armor, a full purple quality set called the Bloodthirsty set. Level 5 defense with a stacking combat bonus every time you kill an enemy. It had belonged to the Fireblade Chieftain before Kudo borrowed it. When I picked up the gloves, a bloody orc finger fell out. The skeletons had ripped the armor off without much care. I checked the rest of the pieces, no more surprises. We loaded everything onto carts and marched back to my territory. After unloading, I sent the skeletons back to their regular duties. Development couldn't stop just because we'd won a battle. I ended the possession and stepped outside. Seeing the world through my own eyes felt so much better. Through the skeleton's vision, everything looked gray and lifeless. Then I found Zhuanghong's Lord's Book among the loot. The moment I touched it, it dissolved into light and merged with mine. A message appeared asking what I wanted to do with his territory, occupy it or abandon it. Occupying meant it would become a secondary territory I could develop. Abandoning would give me most of its resources, but destroy it. With over 1,700 crawling spines and the 100-fold boost, I could build an army beyond anything anyone else could imagine. The beginner protection was almost over, and I needed to be ready. I checked Zhuanghong's territory on the map. It was far to the east, near the orc tribe. Managing it would stretch my forces too thin, so I chose to abandon it. The system gave me 80% of his resources and 50% of his building materials. A huge pile of supplies appeared in my territory. Even better, absorbing his Lord's Book leveled mine up to level 2. My movement speed and gathering rate increased, and my daily message limit doubled. I also unlocked new blueprints, torches, a pasture, and a lumber mill. Zhuanghong had gotten those from the orcs as a reward for serving them. Now they were mine. I realized something important. Defeating other lords and absorbing their books was a path to power that most people didn't know about yet. If this became common knowledge, lords would start hunting each other immediately. In the chat, Zhang Bin was the new celebrity. He'd followed the river upstream and collected over 10 sets of leather armor and helmets from my dead skeletons that had washed downstream. Everyone was praising him like a hero, some even calling him the next big thing after me. I just shook my head. Those were my plain white quality scraps. If they knew I was sitting on hundreds of orc armor sets and a purple quality combat suit, they'd lose their minds. Then Dong Jieyue messaged me. She'd been quiet for 2 days, and I was worried. She was fine. She'd explored deeper into the ancient tomb and found 5 more shadow stones. She wanted to trade them as repayment for the weapons I'd lent her. I accepted the stones, but still gave her 150 units of meat. I wasn't going to take advantage of her. She told me the tomb's deeper chambers had undead skeletons guarding them, but the weapons I'd given her made the difference. Then she asked if I had any armor. She tried buying from Zhang Bin, but couldn't agree on a price. I told her I had plenty and asked how many she needed. Dong Jieyue was stunned when I offered to lend her armor. I gave her 6 sets of simple leather armor and 1 set of orc iron armor. The good stuff, since I needed her to keep exploring that tomb for shadow stones. I tried on the Bloodthirsty set myself, but it was way too heavy. Even possessing a skeleton soldier didn't help. The armor slowed everything down. I needed stronger troops or a stronger body before I could use it. I put it away for later. I built a ranch on flat ground outside my territory, empty for now, but ready for animals. Then I put up a lumber yard near the forest, which boosted wood gathering by 5%. I skipped making torches since my skeletons could work in the dark. I had over 1,700 crawling spines, enough for 100,000 soldiers with my boost. But I held back. Too many troops too fast could cause problems. Better to grow steadily. That afternoon, I possessed a skeleton and took 2,000 soldiers exploring south. In a clearing, I spotted a young one-horned sheep, female, perfect for my new ranch. I ordered the skeletons to catch it alive. They surrounded it, but when it ran, it had but one skeleton so hard he flew backwards through a bush. We chased it for 20 minutes before it vanished completely. But what we found instead was far more interesting. An ancient castle covered in vines and roses, called Wind Castle. Old, gray, and creepy. I pushed open the rusted gate. The courtyard was overgrown with weeds and full of tombstones. And right there beside the graves, shadow stones. I sent a skeleton to grab them, and the ground started shaking. Rotting corpses crawled out, over 100 of them. Decayed skin, blank eyes, terrible smell. I tried talking to them. We're all dead here, right? They charged at me instead. My skeletons tore through them quickly. They were only level 1 and poorly armed with rusty, broken swords. We collected 5 shadow stones, a trace of death, over 100 broken swords, and a key to the castle's second floor. I used the key and led my army inside. The second floor was different. Instead of rotting corpses, we faced zombie spearmen, level 2 units in rusted armor, holding metal spears. They climbed from graves, formed a line, raised old banners, and marched toward us in formation. These weren't mindless bodies. They moved with purpose. I ordered my soldiers to spread out and prepare to fight. The zombie spearmen weren't stupid like the rotting corpses. They formed a tight square formation with their spears pointing outward, like a small version of an ancient phalanx. But they had no commander, so when my skeletons surrounded them, they just kept spinning in place, confused. I gave the order to attack from all sides. The fight was tough. These were level 2 enemies, stronger than my skeletons one-on-one. I fought alongside them, hacking at necks with my iron sword. The dark blood inside them was thick like syrup, disgusting. We won, but lost about 30 soldiers. Even my own skeleton body took a spear to the shoulder, snapping a rib. I tied it up with a piece of torn banner. We collected 7 shadow stones, 2 marks of death, an iron spear blueprint, and over 300 rusty spears, plus another key for the next floor. I opened the castle doors and stepped inside. The interior shocked me. It was beautiful, polished floors, carved walls, crystal lamps glowing softly, a red carpet stretching down the hall. It looked like a small palace. But on top of the stone pillars sat giant bat creatures, eyes closed, muscles twisted under leathery wings. 6 of them. I sent a skeleton forward to test the path. The moment it stepped onto the carpet, one bat opened its eyes, screamed, swooped down, and ripped the skeleton apart in midair. Bones scattered everywhere. Bloodthirsty bat wolves, level 5. My heart dropped. The jump from level 2 to level 5 was insane.